Surekha says, is China going to attack Taiwan? The other question is, can China defeat the US? Akash says, China didn't respond to the Pelosi visit of Taiwan militarily. Do you think the worst is yet to come in the future for Taiwan and the US? Any chances for World War III in the future? And Dheeraj says, how will China respond and manage the strategic and military competition with the US after the Pelosi visit to Taiwan? And there's one more question related to this. Ayush says, I heard news that that China attacked Taiwan but mistakenly dropped bombs in Japan's ocean area. Please, let's discuss what happened after Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan and left in less than 24 hours, right? So these are the questions right now about the Taiwan matter. So let's take it one by one. Is China going to attack Taiwan? Well, the option is there. If you're talking about military action, the option is open. China has a number of options at its disposal right now. It has a number of cards that it can play. So is it going to attack Taiwan? Well, I am not privy to the mind of Mr. Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party Politburo. The option is available. Yeah. But then they have to do a risk analysis, cost benefit analysis. What can happen? Once you start a process, you can't reverse it, right? So the option is there of China launching military action against Taiwan. The second question is, can China defeat the US? If the Chinese were confident that they could defeat the US, then they would have taken military action when Nancy Pelosi was about to visit. And they had been threatening that they would shoot down the plane or accompanying fighter jets. They did nothing of the sort. So if the Chinese thought that they could do it and get away with it and defeat the US, they would certainly have done that. But they did not do it, which tells us very clearly that the Chinese know that it is not in their best interests to start a shooting war with the US, kinetic warfare. It's not going to turn out well for them. The US is overwhelmingly more powerful than the Chinese. That is a fact. China, of course, has military advantages in the Champa Samudra region, the so-called South China Sea region, and in the Strait of Taiwan, etc. So, since we are talking about this, we must look at the map. Where is the map? The map is here. Let me hide this for a second. Where is this flashpoint? So we know where India is. Yes. So let's go east of India. We have the Kalinga Mahasagar, which is apparently called the Bay of Bengal. We have the Champa Samudra, which is the South China Sea, and here we have the island nation of the island of Taiwan, right? And between Taiwan and the Chinese mainland, we have the Strait of Taiwan, the Taiwan Strait. So this is where the entire matter is happening. Now, it's interesting to see something. If you go to the city of Xiamen, the port city of Xiamen, there is something called the Great Kinmen Island, this one here, Kinmen County. Yes, this is administered by Taiwan. It's right off the coast of China, just a few 5 or 6 kilometers off the coast of China, and it is administered by Taiwan. So the Chinese are okay with that. You see, the Chinese know that eventually, when the time is right, they can take everything back. So they are allowing the Taiwanese to control this little island right off the coast of China, where they can actually see it. So this is the region we are talking about, right? So what are the questions? Once again, let me see. Okay, so the Chinese, I believe, cannot defeat the US. It is extremely dangerous for them to start any kind of military action which involves the US. They can certainly dominate this region. Yes, they have a very powerful navy. They may have more numbers than the US has anywhere in the world. The Chinese navy is not, they don't have just a navy, which means the destroyers, corvettes, frigates, submarines, aircraft carriers. They also have the Chinese fishing fleet also doubles up as a navy. Some of their other vessels also, which are typically non-military vessels, also have dual purposes. So they have a massive numerical advantage in this region. Like I keep saying repeatedly, quantity has a quality of its own. India doesn't seem to learn about this. We are investing in extremely expensive platforms like aircraft carriers. Quantity has a quality of its own. It's not my quote. It's what Joseph Stalin said, okay, when he was alive. This quote is attributed to Joseph Stalin, not to me, but it's something I use because it makes sense. Quantity has a quality of its own. The Chinese have been following this dictum. They have massive numbers of vessels in this region. So if there is warfare, they could certainly take over Taiwan, but then the long-term consequences would be terrible. So it's clear that the Chinese cannot defeat the US. It is not advantageous for them to start military action. Possibly, yeah. Uh, China did not respond to the Pelosi visit of Taiwan militarily. Do you think the worst is yet to come in the future? And any chances for World War III in the future? And the next question is also similar to that, right? Right. So, chances of World War III, I hope, are remote. Uh, the thing about war is that it causes a lot of destruction. The US and the Chinese, if they go to war, China will lose a lot of its infrastructure. They will lose strategic assets. So will the US. And wars can go beyond wars can cross certain lines that nobody wants them to cross, right? When a certain side feels threatened, it may feel like it has no option but to use certain weapons that we should not never ever use. And both the Chinese and the Americans have these weapons. I'm talking about nuclear weapons, obviously. So do I think the worst is yet to come in the future? Let's talk about Taiwan. What's happening in Taiwan right now? Let us take a look at what's happening in Taiwan. So the Chinese, like I'd said to somebody, I'm not sure if I said it here, but I had said the Chinese would blockade Taiwan Strait. They have blockaded not just the Taiwan Strait, they've blockaded the entire island. They have blockaded the entire island of Taiwan. As you can see, this image comes from Chinese media. Okay, so this is their official. It's an image put out by the Chinese media itself, government media. So they have all these different blockades, and they call it military exercises. That the Chinese Navy is engaging in legitimate military exercises around the island of Taiwan. So essentially, what they've done is they have completely blockaded the island of Taiwan. They have imposed a no-fly zone over Taiwan, which means that no aircraft can come in, no aircraft can come out, whether it is civilian aircraft or military aircraft or government aircraft or any such thing. Taiwan is now cut off from the rest of the world physically. No aircraft are incoming or outgoing, and the Taiwanese military cannot take any actual action because they're completely surrounded right now. And as we know, the Chinese fired several ballistic missiles over Taiwan, right? So ballistic missiles have ballistic trajectories. They go out into they exit the atmosphere of the Earth. They go into space, and then they re-enter in a parabolic trajectory. So where did these missiles? So there was a question about that as well. Uh, China attacked Taiwan, but mistakenly dropped bombs in Japan's ocean area. So the Chinese did not actually attack Taiwan, but yes, they launched ballistic missiles over the Taiwan island. So let's take a look at the map and see where this happened. I'm not sure where the missiles originated, but somewhere across the Taiwan Strait on the Chinese mainland. And the missiles splashed down in this region. If you see this little island here, Hateruma, it belongs to Japan. As you can see, Japan is right next door to Taiwan. So this island, Hateruma, I believe is the southernmost region in Japan. Yeah, southernmost point in Japan. And the Chinese ballistic missiles splashed down somewhere around this region in Japan's territorial waters in its exclusive economic zone. So the Chinese were sending not only a message to Taiwan, but also to Japan. China and Japan have this long-standing feud, which dates back to the early 20th century and maybe even before that. So that's a whole different story. China has grudges against everybody, essentially. And their objective is to teach everyone a lesson when the time is right. So right now they are saber rattling. They launched missiles that crossed the Taiwanese airspace, of course, in outer space, and they splashed down south of Japan. This was not a mistake. This was very deliberately done. It was a very calculated move. I think it was 5 ballistic missiles or maybe more. I'm not sure. You can look it up, the exact numbers. So that's what they have been doing. They have not actually attacked Taiwan militarily. But yes, they are imposing a blockade, and I don't see this blockade ending anytime soon. So this is the new normal. This is currently the new normal. The Chinese have this very well-known strategy or policy of creeping normalcy, of salami slicing, encroaching 1 inch at a time. We know it very well. We in India know it very well. They occupy Tibet currently, as of right now, temporarily. And from Tibet, they have been engaging on all these provocative maneuvers of grabbing half a meter of land, 1 meter, 300 meters somewhere here, when no one is looking, because the terrain is very mountainous in the India-Tibet border region. And so it's very easy to quickly grab some land. So they have been doing this vis-a-vis India. They were doing it in the 1960s vis-a-vis the Soviet Union. Yeah, the Chinese Soviet Union border clashes, the Ussuri River clashes in the 1960s, which nearly led to nuclear war. So the Chinese are past masters at doing this. So what they are doing right now is they are blockading Taiwan, and this I don't see this blockade ending completely anytime soon. Craft across the Taiwan Strait and into Taiwan's territorial airspace, Taiwanese airspace. And we should also know that the Taiwanese air defense interdiction zone extends into the Chinese mainland. So that is something that the Taiwanese are also they have also been doing. They've also been playing this game, right? So that is the situation. That's what is happening there. Uh, so what are the other questions that we have about this matter? Uh, how will China respond and manage the strategic and military competition with the US after the Pelosi visit to Taiwan? So the main issue from the perspective of China is not that Taiwan is difficult to capture. It is that Taiwan essentially is a proxy of the US, right? When you're dealing with Taiwan, you're essentially dealing with the US. Taiwan is like a vassal state of the US. They It's like a US proxy. It's like a US held island in this region. There are these what do you call them? The islands, the island chains. First island chain, second island chain. So the first island chain is Taiwan and the Japanese islands, which kind of cut off China's free access to the Pacific Ocean. Philippines is also kind of part of that, and then you have the second island chain, which is the Marshall Islands and Guam and all that, which also the Midway Atoll, etc., which are also held by the US. So the Chinese feel that once they can break free of these island chains, then they will have the freedom to essentially take over the Pacific Ocean region with their enormous naval strength and so on. But these islands are very well defended, and starting any military action will be extremely counterproductive to China. So I think that given the multiple options that China has, the logical option is to continue an aggressive policy of salami slicing. Going to war, they don't want to destroy the island of Taiwan, right? They want to take it. It's a valuable island. It's a prize catch. If you destroy the island of Taiwan in a war, in a ballistic war, then you will have to rebuild it. They will have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars rebuilding the island of Taiwan. It's far better to capture the island entirely intact. That makes much more sense from a military and strategic perspective, from a geopolitical perspective. You don't want to inherit a wasteland. You want to inherit something that is intact. So what the Chinese one of the options the Chinese have is to continue this blockade of Taiwan indefinitely. Just keep it going on and on. Keep encroaching into their airspace. Keep encroaching into their naval space, their exclusive economic zone. Just make it all irrelevant. Make this the new normal, that the Chinese will be everywhere, and blockade the island. Don't allow flights in and out. Starve it in a say. It's a siege policy, siege warfare policy of sorts. Yes, and the Chinese. They have enormous economic clout. There are certain disaffected elements inside Taiwan who are politically more leaning towards the Chinese Communist Party. There are always such elements in any nation, right? There are such anti-national elements in Russia, in China, in Taiwan, back home in India, etc. Every nation has certain such disaffected elements. So in Taiwan, there are certain elements that support the Chinese claim of Chinese desire to reunify the island of Taiwan with the mainland, and the Chinese will maybe financially support them and give them more prominence, and so that sort of thing could happen. If you are under a state of siege where you are blockaded and you don't have any way in or out, then slowly over time you get impatient and you start resenting the government, which is able to do nothing. And that's when these other political forces gain more currency. And even the Taiwanese economy has a great deal of interlinkages with China, with the Chinese economy. Many of the companies work in both places, etc. So you could influence the Taiwanese population through that as well. So the Chinese have multiple means of achieving their long-term objectives. So I believe that right now, even though the military option is open, it is somewhat unlikely that the Chinese will indulge in a military adventure or misadventure. Unlikely, not impossible. Yeah, it is certainly on the cards. The cards are open, but more likely they will continue the blockade as long as it takes. It costs them nothing. They can keep it going. They have a massive naval strength, and they will slowly try to turn the tide internally in Taiwan and make the population more receptive towards reunification with China. And if there is an upsurge of that sentiment, then it becomes very hard for even the Americans who keep on tom-tomming about democracy to deny the sentiment. So these are the options that the Chinese have. What they will actually do remains to be seen. Uh, so that's the situation as of today, right, in this region.